far. Okay. So save this, and we are done with that. Okay, I will skip number 2 for now because this is a long one. And I want to go back and look at the other practice exam, which is actually something that I worked on last night. So those are new questions and probably more relevant to this particular final exam. So right here we have this guy. All right. And as you can see, I make my questions a lot shorter this time. Trace this and turn it in. I mean, that's pretty much as concise as it can get. So we save it in today's folder. I just called it Kanda, which is the name of a character in an anime. I don't want the name of the subroutine to imply what it does. So that's why I just randomly pick some name to name the subroutines. Does anyone know where it came from? No? Huh?
I have no idea.
You have no idea. That's not a good sign. That means I watch more anime than you guys.
Last anime I watched was Guyver when I was 11.
They have since remade Guyver, I think. Yeah. But not with more gore. I think the original Guyver. Yeah, it still has more gore, but the new one has more storyline to it.
Right.
Yeah, they backfill some of the missing storylines.
Yeah, well, I think it has more episodes too.
Yeah, the new one has more.
26 or something.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a longer subroutine in this case, so this one will take a little bit longer to trace, but nonetheless we can do it. New window, and look at sheet 2, which is the trace. Okay, and let's see. I'm just trying to figure out, how I should resize the screen for the trace. This one is not really bad because it doesn't have any recursion. Okay, so this one is just a little bit long because we have to invoke the swap subroutine, set up the columns and then remove the column, set it up again, and so on. All right, so we take a look at the subroutines. Strange is the first subroutine. It has one parameter that is an array passed by reference. It has one integer passed by value. It has a local variable I. I gets the value of b as long as I is less than bar a bar minus 1. We do the following: we invoke swap, and we pass two elements of a, which is a bracket I and a bracket I plus 1, to the two parameters of swap. And then we increment I, so it goes back, so eventually I will become greater than or equal to bar a bar minus 1, and then we can exit the loop. Swap is basically just the swap subroutine, nothing really major here. The three lines of statements that we need to perform the swap operation are here. And then the main program just invokes strange using the global variable b as an array to specify parameter a, and I use a constant of 1 to specify the parameter b, and that's it. Okay. Now you might think that there are two b's here, and there may be some confusion, but the answer is no. There's no confusion whatsoever, because this b refers to the global array b, and this b refers to the parameter b of strange. So because of the context, there's no way that these two b's can be confused. Any questions so far before we continue? Yes?
So when you start doing this entire program, you start with line 21 and then go into subroutine string, which will then put you into swap?
Yep, exactly. Okay, so now we can go ahead and get started with this. This one is just long, but in terms of complexity, it's not really that bad. So we start with line 21, just like we said, and we are not going to do anything to the array on line 21. Instead, we'll set up the additional columns. So in this case, we have return line number because subroutine strange does not return a value, and the return line number is going to be post because there's nothing after line 21. We have to pass the parameter a, parameter b, and that thing has a local variable I. Parameter A is also known as columns C through F. Parameter B is 1, because that's exactly what I specify here. The local variable I must start with an unknown value. Now that is also important because when you program in C, you have to make sure that you remember all local variables start with some value, but you don't know what it is, which is a little bit different from some other programming languages, which almost guarantees that all variables will start with a value of 0 or null or something along that line. In C, they start with some value, but you don't know what it is. So this part is very important because most of you are moving on to the C class, so you have to remember local variables do not start with any specific value. Okay. So once we have all that set up, we optimize the column width, just like that. And then we move on to the subroutine range. The subroutine range, since we're not dealing with recursion, this is not really terribly hard. We start on line 5. Line 5 really doesn't do much. All it does is to copy the parameter B to I. So I starts with 1. And line 6 is the condition of the while loop. I is less than bar A bar minus 1 is true because bar A bar in this case is 4. 1 is less than 4 is true. Oh, excuse me. Bar A bar is 4, but 4 minus 1 is 3. 1 is still less than 3, but I have to explain that correctly, okay, because I used the wrong value to compare to. Since the condition of line 6 is true, we move into the loop, going to line 7. Line 7 is not recursive, it is calling another subroutine, but whether it is calling another subroutine or the same subroutine should make no difference whatsoever. The mechanism of calling is still the same. Now this time the tricky part is how do we use an array element to pass to a pass by reference parameter. Okay, it is kind of like a combination of things that we have seen and things that we have not seen. We may not have seen it in this context, but we have talked about passing by reference. We have talked about array indexing. So we just have to combine those two concepts together to understand what this is going to do. So we say, well, let's set up the return line numbers and all kinds of stuff like that first. Return line number, because swap does not return a value. It has two parameters, x and also y. Return line number is the easy one. The line that is logically following the invoke statement on line 7 is line 8. Sorry? Oh, we have a local variable t. Then you're right. You are correct. Local variable t is easy. That's a question mark. It is. What? No, line 8 is right because line 8 follows line 7 in this case. Okay, but the big question is, what do we specify to pass to x and what do we use to specify y? That's the question. Okay, what exactly is A? A is also known as column C to column F. And we know that I is 1 at this point. So what is A bracket 1? Which column are we referring to? Okay, well, let's just scroll this around. We're looking at column D. Okay, so we want to pass that by reference to parameter x. So what do we put here? Column D.